Basketball transcends barriers, racial, economics. We've seen guys actually put their guns down on the outside court and come and play basketball, and after the game is over, pick up their guns and go their separate ways.
Basketball is like life. It has everything about it. It has people competing for success. You need everything in basketball that you need in life to be successful. Skills, fundamentals. Conditioning so that you can work harder and longer than your opponents. Most importantly, you need teamwork. Support of your teammates, of your friends, of your family, of your community to get to a higher level than you can get to by yourself.
The universal appeal of basketball owes much to the special circumstances that led James Naismith to think up the game in the first place.
Dr. Naismith faced the problem how to give these young missionaries that he was training for overseas work, where they'd be subject to typhoid and yellow fever and all kinds of hazards of that sort. How do you make them exercise in the long winters in Massachusetts? Football was easy, but when football was over, what do you do until baseball? And so he wanted an indoor game.
This was the era of the muscular Christian, and the YMCA was the flagship of that philosophy. It was a Protestant idea reaching back to the ancient Greeks. It linked exercise with spiritual development, physical activity with good moral living. In the words of Dr. Luther Gulick, head of the Springfield YMCA, bodily vigor is a moral agent. It enables us to live on higher levels, to keep up to the top of our achievement. This was an approach to life which Naismith readily embraced. Raised on the frontiers of Canada, his had been a difficult early life. Orphaned at the age of 9, he dropped out of school 6 years later and then headed for the logging camps deep in the Canadian wilderness. There, he lived the rough and tumble life of a lumberjack. Hard work, whiskey, and colorful companions. After 5 years, a change came over Naismith. He returned to school to study for the ministry. But then, as it is known to do, the ball took a funny bounce. Naismith discovered rugby. His farm boy strength made him an immediate success. His love of sport, though, did not sit well with the more high-minded students at the seminary college. Rugby was a tool of the devil, they told him. They prayed for his soul. But Naismith continued to dive headlong into the scrum. One game, a teammate let loose a stream of profanity, and then, for unknown reasons for which all basketball fans should be grateful, he turned to Naismith and apologized.
Looking back, I have to say this surprised me because I had never said anything about his cursing before. The only reason I could come up with was that I played the game with all my might, yet held myself under control. It was then that I realized there might be other ways of doing good, besides preaching.
It was this thought that led James Naismith away from the ministry and through the doors of the Young Men's Christian Association in Springfield, Massachusetts in September 1890. The invention of basketball was little more than a year away. How could this energetic young man possibly have imagined the gift he was about to give to the world?
He couldn't have possibly had any idea it would be on this particular level, but he's been able to make so many bridges with this basketball thing that transcends just about everything that's negative. It transcends.
Spectacular move by Michael Jordan.
Small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Sports are as old as the human race. It's no accident that the most powerful symbol of the Olympics is the eternal flame, the Promethean gift that burns in every human soul. The ancient Greeks believed deeply in the bond between the body, the mind, and the spirit. And the Olympic Games were their way of celebrating this most fundamental of nature's mysteries.
The Olympics is unique in it is the event where all of the emotions are stretched to the limit, and it's in that event where you achieve things that are bigger, better than ever been done before. Whilst I think the Olympic ideal is changing somewhat in these modern times, you still see examples where competitors will actually assist their opponents in achieving something better. And that is especially unique. Whereas that there is a common bond between Olympians of saying we are all trying and striving for doing something better than we've ever done before. And whether it's ourselves, our teammates or competitors, to achieve that, we will, if you like, rejoice in going beyond what we've done before.
In the world at large, sports speaks a universal language because it is a struggle acted out physically with the body. You don't have to describe it in any one particular language. If you had ears to hear all the different languages in which an Olympic game were being broadcast, you'd hear a babble of tongues. But everybody around the world can understand the language of the game. It is a universal language. And at least one of the games invented by Americans, basketball, has provided that language for the entire world.
The language of the game may be action and emotion, but what of the deeper drama it's expressing?
Go on for some time.
While a sporting contest may entertain, it should not be mistaken for mere entertainment. There's no script. Fair and unfair, fate, the bounce of the ball, has its hand to play. Sports reach deep inside of us precisely because the outcome of the drama is not assured. For those who know the language, the play is indeed the thing with which to prick the conscience of the king.
The game is about life, really. I mean, it's, it's just a little piece of life that you can see for 2 hours. Fans come and watch it for 2 hours. And it's very similar to what we do with our lives in general. You're trying to win, you're trying to be successful, you're trying to get maximum out of what it is that you can do. It's forming relationships with other people and working together for a single cause. It's all of those kinds of things.
Basketball is my life. It's what I do, who I am, and what I love. For me, it concentrates life into peak moments of experience.
There's something about sports that grips a deep part of our life. And I think, I myself think, it's a reflection of living and dying. We know we're going to die. And that's always sort of haunting us. We don't think about it, of course. But to win a victory over it, to do something as perfectly as you can, as beautifully as you can, with, as it were, the gods blowing the winds behind you, and everything coming out all right.
Competitive sports, then, are not an escape from reality. Quite the contrary. In the sporting arena, life is distilled down to its very essences. Here, courage meets failure of nerve. Truth wrestles with illusion. Confidence does battle with self-doubt. The game strips away the veil of daily life and personal history and opens a window to the human spirit.
We put our butt on the line every single game. Every individual who plays does. Every coach who coaches puts it right out there. And at the end of that night, you're going to know whether you're successful or not. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's one way or the other. It's either you are or you aren't.
The toughest opponent you ever face is always going to be yourself. You know, what are your limits? You see, and not all of us get the opportunity to test our courage. You know, what would you do when you are absolutely confronted with a crisis of life? You see, I think for many of us, if we get the chance to do that and survive, we're going to feel better about ourselves, you see. And not that many people are confronted with that. People who climb mountains want to do that because they're simulating this crisis of life, if you like, of what their limits are. You see, and I think you get that through sport. Each time you go out and play, you say, what are my limits? What can I do to test me?
For a team, the test will always come down to one simple, final question. Victory or defeat? But along the way, within the team game, a whole world of individual battles are being fought, games within games. For competitive athletes, these are the challenges they relish. This, the daily drug to which they become addicted.
Basketball is so multifaceted to the fact that within the game you have so many different competitions going. You have a great defensive player playing against a great offensive player, so they got this one-on-one matchup going within the total game. You have a great passer that is trying to show the world he's the best assist man going. You have the best rebounder. You have the best player on the floor that is noticed for stopping the best rebounder for getting the ball by boxing out. You have all these different competitions going on within the total picture. I've always figured, well, if I can outplay my man, we're already one up. So this is the psychological part of my basketball game. To help my team, I had to beat the player that I was matched up with.
It's about will. And also, if you're going to have that great willpower, you also have to have a special skill. And that special skill allows you to, when things get the toughest and when things look the bleakest, that if you just don't cave in, and if you know you're playing against someone who's going to cave in, sooner or later that guy's going to he's going to lose. But what's unique about basketball, you can kill your guy on the basketball court. You can embarrass him. You can put him on the bench, and yet you might lose the ball game.
Jerry didn't win his title until late in his career, and that really, I think, haunted him. For the longest time, he's a guy who couldn't sleep at night after games because he would play the game over in his head. And Bob Cousy was that way too. Cousy would get nauseous before games all the time. And in that way, I think great players are kind of obsessive. They're thinking the game. They're working out different elements of the game. Bill Russell, I think he blocked more shots just with his presence than he did physically by raising an arm. And he loved to play that sight game and kind of set a guy up for a block shot.
As we proceeded to win additional championships, I marveled at the ability of our ball club to really focus year in and year out. And I must say that Bob Cousy and Bill Russell were geniuses and really probably the greatest competitors anybody's ever been around because they just refused to lose. This was their manhood. This was their persona. This is what they stood by. That's what they considered themselves to be, and the best in the world. And that was them, man. And everything they represented, they were putting into it. So they held back in no way, shape, or form in order to win. So that's what the great competitors are able to do.
Greatness in an athlete is not just a measure of physical gifts. It's an act of will. It demands the courage to reach for every challenge and an unflinching belief that there are no limits to excellence. The great ones will go where the merely good fear to tread.
Come put your hand into the flame. Gotta shed the skin, gotta break the shell.
It's this burning passion to dominate that has set number 23 from Chicago apart.
Michael's a competitor. I don't think there's anyone that can compete quite as well as he can. Having seen competitors at their finest and also at their most extravagant, I would say Michael tops the list. He wants to win everything, whether it's a ping pong table game or it's just a game of Nintendo. He wants to do the best. He's going to try and beat you one way or the other. You know, I know that he's always at that level of, you know, searching to beat somebody or to pull out that competition. The competition's not what makes him the best. It's the fact that that elevates his effort to a stage where he won't give in. He doesn't bend. He keeps trying, and he holds out hope. He's got great skill and intelligence to go with it. Athletic skill's good, his intelligence level's high, so that he can make great decisions in a moment, instinctive decisions that take intelligence and great athletic ability.